Commander Jack Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The numbers made no sense. After 3 months of traveling through deep space, his ship had found something impossible. A massive space station floated in the darkness, older than anything humans had ever discovered. "Lisa, are you seeing this?" Jack called to his science officer. Dr. Lisa Carter was already bent over her instruments, her face pale with excitement and fear. "Commander, this thing is huge. My scanners say it's at least 50 miles long. And the materials, I've never seen anything like them. They're not breaking down, even though they must be millions of years old." Tony Rodriguez, the ship's engineer, looked up from his control panel. "The power readings are off the charts. Sir, whatever built this thing had technology we can only dream about." Amy Davis, their communications expert, was frantically working at her station. "I'm picking up some kind of signal from the station. It's very weak, but it's there. Almost like it's waiting for something." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years exploring space, he had never found anything like this. The U.S. Horizon was humanity's most advanced ship, but compared to this ancient station, it looked like a toy. "Take us closer, Tony, but keep the engines ready to run if we need to." As their ship moved toward the station, more details became clear. The hull was covered in strange symbols that seemed to flow and change when Jack looked at them. But there was something familiar about them, something that made his mind itch with half-remembered thoughts. "Those symbols," Lisa said quietly. "They look almost like—" "No, that's impossible. What is it?" Jack asked. "They remind me of ancient human writing. But that can't be right. This station is older than human civilization." Amy suddenly straightened up. "Commander, I'm getting a response to our presence. The station is sending out some kind of welcoming signal. It's in a language I don't recognize, but my computer is trying to translate it." The main screen flickered, and words appeared in perfect English. "Welcome home, children of Earth." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the message, trying to understand what it meant. How could an ancient alien station know about Earth? How could it speak their language? "That has to be a mistake," Tony said. "The translation software must be broken." But Amy shook her head. "No, the signal is getting stronger. It's like the station is waking up because we're here. And there's more." She paused, her voice shaking slightly. "It's broadcasting on frequencies that match human brain patterns. It's trying to talk directly to us." Lisa's scanners beeped urgently. "Commander, I'm detecting an atmosphere inside the station. Oxygen and nitrogen mix, perfect for human breathing. The temperature is comfortable, too. It's like someone built this place specifically for us." Jack made a decision that would change everything. "Prepare the shuttle. We're going aboard." An hour later, Jack, Lisa, and Tony stepped through the airlock into the ancient station. The air was fresh and clean, with a slight metallic taste. The corridors were exactly the right height for humans to walk comfortably. The walls glowed with a soft light that didn't hurt their eyes. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. "Look at these walls. The metal is completely smooth, but my scanner says it's stronger than anything we can make. And the way it bends light, it's like the whole station is alive." They walked deeper into the station, their footsteps echoing in the vast spaces. Every door they approached opened automatically. Every control panel they touched responded immediately, as if recognizing their presence. "Commander," Tony called, from a side room, "you need to see this." They found Tony standing in front of a massive wall covered in star charts. But these weren't just any star charts. They showed the entire galaxy, with tiny symbols marking thousands of star systems. And there, in a small section near the edge, was a very familiar sight. "That's our solar system," Lisa breathed. "But look at the date marker. This chart is from when Earth was still forming. before life even existed on our planet. Jack studied the chart more carefully. Other symbols marked different areas of the galaxy. Some looked like fleet positions. Others seemed to show major settlements or important facilities. Whoever had built this station had controlled the entire galaxy. "There's more," Tony said, pointing to another section of the wall. "These symbols here, they're showing population numbers. Billions and billions of people spread across thousands of worlds. This wasn't just an exploration mission. This was an empire." Amy's voice crackled through their communication devices. "Commander, you need to get back to the ship. I'm picking up multiple signals from across the galaxy. Other stations like this. One are waking up. They're all responding to your presence on that station." But Lisa had found something else. In the center of the room was a pedestal with a small device on top. When she approached it, the device began to glow. Holographic images filled the air around them. The images showed beings that looked exactly like humans. They wore strange clothes and used technology beyond human understanding, but their faces, their bodies, their movements were unmistakably human. The images showed vast cities on distant worlds, fleets of ships moving between the stars, and billions of people living across the galaxy. "This can't be right," Jack said. "Humans only left Earth a few hundred years ago. We've never had an empire like this." But the images kept coming. They showed humans reshaping entire worlds, moving stars, and building structures that defied physics. They showed a civilization so advanced that they seemed like gods compared to modern humanity. The final image showed something that made Jack's blood run cold. It was Earth, but not the Earth he knew. This Earth was covered in massive cities and surrounded by orbital stations. Millions of ships moved between Earth and the stars. It was clearly the center of a galactic empire. Then the images changed. They showed the humans abandoning their cities, shutting down their technology, and gathering in huge groups. They were leaving, all of them. The entire galactic empire was packing up and going somewhere else. The last image showed a small group of humans landing on a primitive, empty world covered in forests and oceans. They looked different now. Their clothes were simple, their technology basic. They looked like early humans, Stone Age humans. The world they landed on was Earth. "Lisa," Jack said slowly, "run a genetic scan on me." Lisa's hands shook as she worked her scanner. When the results came up, her face went white. "Commander, your genetic pattern matches the database in this station. Not similar." "Matches exactly. According to this, you're descended from the beings who built this place." Tony laughed nervously. "That's impossible. This station is millions of years old." But Amy's voice cut through their confusion. "Commander, get back here now. I'm getting signals from the Galactic Council. They know what you found, and they're scared, really scared." As they rushed back to their shuttle, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they had just opened a door that had been closed for a very long time. The ancient station continued to hum with power behind them, its systems fully awakened after eons of sleep. Whatever they had discovered, it was going to change everything. Not just for humanity, but for every species in the galaxy. The ancients were returning, whether they wanted to or not, and according to the station's database, the ancients had always been human. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in over 1,000 years. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. The air was thick with tension, and Fear. Council leader Zeph Carr of the Valerian Empire stood at the center podium, his blue skin darker than usual with stress. His 4 arms gestured frantically as he spoke to the assembled aliens. "Fellow beings of the galaxy, we face our greatest crisis in recorded history. The humans have found one of their stations. The ancients are awakening. A wave of terrified sounds swept through the chamber. The Krillian delegate, a massive insect-like creature, clicked its mandibles in distress. The Thorian representative, covered in thick fur and standing 9 feet tall, growled low in his throat. Even the peaceful Nexari, who never showed emotion, were visibly shaking. Dr. Helen Brooks sat in the human section, completely confused. She had been humanity's ambassador to the Council for 3 years, but she had never seen the aliens react like this. They looked absolutely terrified. "I don't understand," Helen said, standing up. "What do you mean by their stations?" "Commander Morrison found an ancient alien facility." "How does that involve humans?" The chamber fell silent. Thousands of alien eyes turned to look at her. The fear in their faces was overwhelming. Z.E.P. Chikar's voice shook as he spoke. "Ambassador Brooks, your species doesn't know, does it? You truly don't remember." "Remember what?" Helen asked. The Krillian delegate stood up, his voice like grinding metal. "The terror. The endless war. The species that ruled us all for millions of years before they vanished." Helen felt cold. "What are you talking about?" An elderly Nexari floated forward, her tentacles moving slowly. "Child of the stars, your people called themselves the Ancients. They ruled this galaxy completely. Every world, every system, every species lived under their control." "That's impossible," Helen said. "Humans only developed space travel 300 years ago. We've never had a galactic empire." But the Thorian representative shook his massive head. "We have records, human. Every species does. Stories passed down for millions of years. Warnings about the day the Ancients would return." Zef-Kar activated. A holographic display. Images filled the air above the chamber. They showed ancient ruins on dozens of worlds, all bearing the same symbols that Commander Morrison had found. They showed massive structures that defied understanding, built with technology far beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. "These are on our worlds," Zef-Kar said. "Every single inhabited planet in the galaxy has ruins like these. We always thought they were built by some unknown alien race. But your Commander Morrison's discovery proves what we always feared. They were built by humans." Helen stared at the images. The symbols were definitely the same ones from Morrison's report. But the scale was incredible. These weren't just buildings. They were entire cities, some larger than continents. The Krillian delegate began to speak, his voice full of ancient pain. "My people's oldest stories tell of the time of silence. The Ancients could change our very thoughts. They could make entire populations disappear overnight. Worlds that resisted them were reshaped into wastelands. The Nexari archives speak of the great builders," the elderly Nexari added. "Beings who could move stars and create new worlds. They traveled between galaxies as easily as we travel between rooms. No force in the universe could stand against them." A small, cat-like alien from the feline coalition stood up. "Our legends say they fought wars across multiple galaxies simultaneously. They had weapons that could destroy solar systems. They lived forever and never aged." Helen's mind was spinning. This has to be some kind of mistake. Humans aren't capable of any of that. But Zef-Kar pulled up more images. These showed genetic analysis data. "We've been secretly studying human genetics since you joined the Council. Ambassador Brooks, we had to know if you are truly them. The results are undeniable. Human DNA matches samples we've found in ancient ruins across the galaxy." The chamber erupted in frightened voices. Species that had been allies for centuries were suddenly eyeing each other suspiciously. Some were calling for humanity's immediate destruction. Others wanted to surrender before the humans remembered their power. "Please," Helen said, trying to calm the panic. "Even if this is true, we're not the same as these ancients. Humans today are peaceful. We want to work with you, not rule over you. The Thorian representative laughed bitterly. That's what they said before? The ancients claimed they only wanted to help us develop. They said they were bringing peace and order to the galaxy. But peace under their rule meant total control. Zef-Kar brought up another display. This one showed star maps with markings Helen had never seen before. These are the locations of every ancient facility we found. There are thousands of them, all connected by some kind of network. And according to our analysis, they all respond to human genetic markers. What does that mean? Helen asked, though she was afraid of the answer. It means, the Krillian delegate said slowly, that any human can activate ancient technology. Your Commander Morrison didn't just find one station. He woke up the entire network. Helen felt sick. Are you saying that all of their old technology is turning on? Not just turning on, Zef-Kar replied. Getting ready. Our deep space monitors are detecting power buildups in ancient facilities across the galaxy. Stations that have been dead for millions of years are coming back to life. The elderly Nexari floated closer to Helen. Child, do you understand what this means? The ancients built weapons that could crack planets in half. They had ships that could travel instantly across the galaxy. If even a fraction of their technology becomes active again. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Helen could see the fear in every alien face in the chamber. These species had spent millions of years building their own civilizations, believing they were free. Now they were learning that they had always been living in the shadow of humanity's ancient empire. But why did they leave? Helen asked. If they were so powerful, why did they disappear? The chamber fell quiet again. This was the question that had puzzled galactic historians for millennia. We don't know, Zef-Kar admitted. One day they ruled everything. The next day they were gone. No war, no disaster, no explanation. They just left. The Thorian representative growled softly. Some of our stories say they grew bored with ruling. Others claim they transcended to a higher form of existence. But the most frightening possibility is that they're still out there, waiting. Helen thought about Commander Morrison's report. The station had welcomed the humans home. It had been waiting for them to return. What if they didn't transcend or leave? She said quietly. What if they just forgot? What if humans are the ancients, but we lost our memories somehow? The terror that swept through the chamber was almost physical. The idea that humanity might suddenly remember their ancient power was the stuff of galactic nightmares. Ambassador Brooks, Zef-Kar said formally, by the authority of the Galactic Council, I must ask you to leave this chamber. We need to discuss how to handle this crisis. Helen stood up slowly. And what exactly are you planning to discuss? The silence that followed was her answer. As she walked toward the exit, she could hear whispered conversations starting behind her. Words like containment and preemptive action reached her ears. Outside the chamber, Helen contacted the U.S. Horizon immediately. Commander Morrison, we have a problem. A very big problem. As she explained what she had learned, Helen realized that humanity was at a crossroads. They could be on the verge of reclaiming an ancient empire they never knew they had. Or they could be facing a war with every other species in the galaxy. Either way, nothing would ever be the same again. Dr. Ben Clark wiped sweat from his forehead as he stood outside the massive underground entrance on Kepler 438b. The desert planet was hot and dry, but that wasn't why he was sweating. After 2 weeks of digging, his archaeological team had found something that shouldn't exist. Dr. Clark called his assistant, Jenny Martinez, from inside the entrance tunnel. You need to see this right now. Ben walked into the cool darkness of the underground city. His team had been following reports of ancient ruins across the galaxy ever since Commander Morrison's discovery. Each site they visited made the impossible truth clearer. The tunnel opened into a vast underground space filled with buildings. But these weren't alien structures. The doorways were human-sized. The stairs had steps that perfectly matched human legs. Even the handrails were at exactly the right height for human hands. Over here, Jenny called from a building that looked like it might have been a home. I found something in what appears to be a child's room. Ben followed her into a small space with walls covered in faded drawings. The pictures showed stick figures that looked like human families. In the corner was a small table with something sitting on top of it. It was a toy. A small wooden horse, carved with incredible skill and preserved perfectly in some kind of crystal. Storage field. But it wasn't the craftsmanship that made Ben's hands shake as he picked it up. It was the fact that it looked exactly like toys human children had played with for thousands of years. Ben, Jenny whispered, this toy is at least 2 million years old, but it could have been made yesterday on Earth. Dr. Rachel Green's voice crackled through their communication devices. Ben, are you getting this? I'm in the main plaza, and I found something incredible. Ben and Jenny rushed to meet Rachel in the center of the underground city. She was standing in front of a huge wall covered in symbols, but she wasn't looking at the alien writing. She was staring at something much simpler. Cut into the stone, in letters that were clearly recognizable, were human names. John Anderson, Mary Peterson, Robert Williams, Sarah Johnson. Hundreds of them, carved deep into the rock. These are memorial names, Rachel said quietly, like the ones we put on gravestones. And look at this. She pointed to a section that had been translated. It says these people died defending their home from something called the Void War. Ben felt cold despite the desert heat above them. Rachel, how many names are on this wall? I've counted over 3,000 so far, but this is just one section. The wall continues around the entire plaza. They spent the next 3 days documenting everything they found. The underground city was enormous, capable of housing millions of people. The technology was beyond anything humans could build today, but every single piece of evidence pointed to one impossible conclusion. The people who had lived here were human. Meanwhile, on the ice planet Proxima 7, pilot Steve Harrison was making his own shocking discovery. His exploration team had found what looked like a research facility buried under miles of ice. Steve called his teammate, Dr. Mike Foster, from the main laboratory. You're not going to believe what I've found in here. Steve made his way through corridors lined with equipment that seemed to be made of light itself. The facility was clearly designed for scientific research, but the scale was incredible. Some of the rooms were large enough to hold entire spaceships. He found Mike standing in front of a wall covered with glowing displays. Each display showed what looked like genetic information, but the patterns were familiar. Steve, this is a genetic database. It contains the complete genetic patterns for thousands of different species. But look at this section. Mike pointed to a large area filled with human genetic codes. Every single human genetic variation is here, past, present, and future. It's like they mapped out the entire human species across time. Steve studied the displays more carefully. Mike, some of these genetic patterns are labeled with dates. This one says it's from 50,000 years in the future. How is that possible? I don't know, but there's more. Look at this. Mike activated another display. It showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with genetic information flowing between different star systems. They were tracking genetic development across the entire galaxy. Not just humans, but every species. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. In the deepest level of the facility, they found something that made everything else seem small-dotted. Was a room filled with millions of storage containers, each one containing what appeared to be genetic samples. But these weren't just random collections. Each container was labeled with a world name and a species type. It was a complete genetic library of every form of life in the galaxy. "Steve," Mike said in a shaking voice, "according to these labels, this facility is older than most of the species whose genetics are stored here. It's like they knew what species would evolve before they actually evolved." The final piece of the puzzle came from the rogue planet drifting between stars. Steve's team had been reluctant to land on the dark, frozen world, but their scans had detected massive energy signatures beneath the surface. What they found there changed everything. The underground facility was the largest they had discovered yet. It stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction, containing technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. But in the center of it all was something that made Steve's blood freeze. It was a memorial wall, but not like the one Dr. Clark had found. This wall contained billions of names. Billions. It stretched up into the darkness, so far that they couldn't see the top, even with their brightest lights. But these weren't random names carved in stone. These were displayed on screens that still functioned after millions of years. As Steve walked along the wall, names scrolled by slowly. Human names. All of them human names. John Smith, Lisa Anderson, David Brown, Jennifer Wilson, Michael Davis, Sarah Miller. The names went on, an endless river of human identity stretching back through time. At the base of the wall was a simple message in perfectly readable English. Here lie the names of all who chose to forget so that their children might remember differently. Dr. Ben Clark received the reports from all the teams at the same time. As the lead archaeologist, it was his job to put together all the evidence they had found. The conclusion was unavoidable, but it was still hard to accept. Humans hadn't just had a galactic empire. They had created one that spanned millions of years and included every known world. The ancient facilities weren't abandoned alien bases. They were human cities, human research stations, human monuments. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same incredible truth. Humans had once been the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had possessed technology that could reshape worlds and extend life indefinitely. They had known about species that wouldn't evolve for millions of years. And then they had given it all up. The memorial walls told the story. Billions of humans had chosen to abandon their technology, their immortality, and their memories. They had traveled to a small planet on the edge of the galaxy and started over as primitive beings. That planet was Earth. But why would the most powerful species in galactic history choose to become powerless? What could drive beings with godlike abilities to give up everything and start fresh? Ben was studying the question when his communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Rachel Green. "Ben, you need to get to the main database chamber immediately. I've found something. I've found the reason they left." As Ben rushed to meet Rachel, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover the most important secret in galactic history. The ancients hadn't been destroyed or transcended. They had made a choice, and that choice had created modern humanity. The question now was whether that choice had been the right one, and whether humanity was ready to learn why their ancestors had been willing to give up godhood itself. Dr. Paul Newman had always been good with languages, but the ancient script was unlike anything he had ever seen. For 6 months, he had been working day and night to decode the symbols found in the deepest vaults of the ancient facilities. Today, he finally broke through. The breakthrough came when he realized that the symbols weren't just letters or words. They were mathematical equations that described emotions and concepts. Each symbol contained layers of meaning that built on each other like a complex puzzle. "I've got it," Paul said to his assistant, Dr. Kelly Wright. The key was understanding that they didn't just write words. They wrote entire thoughts and feelings into single symbols. Kelly looked at the translation appearing on Paul's screen. The first complete sentence made her step back in surprise. We have become what we swore never to become. We are the very thing we once fought against. Paul continued translating, his hands shaking as more of the ancient text became clear. What he was reading was a diary, written by someone who had lived through the end of the ancient civilization. Kelly, get Captain Martinez on the line immediately. She needs to hear this. Captain Lisa Martinez had been put in charge of the joint human-alien research effort after the Galactic Council's emergency session. The aliens were still deciding what to do about humanity, and tensions were growing higher every day. Some species wanted to attack before humans could remember their power. Others wanted to surrender immediately. When Paul's call came through, Lisa was in a meeting with representatives from 12 different alien species. They were all trying to understand what humanity's return might mean for the galaxy. Captain Martinez, Paul's voice was urgent. I've translated the Exodus records. You need to hear this right away. Lisa put the call on speaker so everyone could hear. Go ahead, Dr. Newman. What did you find? Paul's voice was shaky as he began to read. This is from the final entry of Supreme Commander Elena Vasquez, written in the last days of the ancient civilization. We have reached the end of our journey as rulers of this galaxy. For 10 million years, we have controlled every world, every species, every form of life. We told ourselves we were bringing order and peace. We believed we were helping younger races develop safely under our guidance. The aliens in the meeting room looked at each other nervously. This was exactly what they had feared. Paul continued reading. But we were wrong. We have become stagnant. Our technology has made us immortal, but immortality has made us cruel. We no longer grow, no longer learn, no longer feel wonder at the universe around us. We have become the very tyrants we once rebelled against in our own youth. Lisa felt a chill. Keep reading, Paul. Worse, our presence prevents other species from reaching their full potential. Every time a young race begins to develop something new, we step in with our superior technology. We solve their problems before they can learn to solve them themselves. We have become a blanket that smothers the growth of every other form of life in the galaxy. The Krillian representative made a clicking sound. This matches our oldest stories. They did intervene in our development. We never learned to build our own solutions because they always provided better ones. Paul's voice continued from the speaker. The Council of Ancients has made our final decision. We will not repeat the mistakes of the previous galactic rulers. We will not become another dead civilization that clings to power until it destroys everything around it. Previous galactic rulers? Lisa asked. There were others before humanity? Paul had found that part too. Yes, Captain. According to these records, there have been at least 7 different species that ruled the galaxy before humanity. Each one became so powerful that they stopped growing and started controlling everything else. Each one eventually destroyed itself through stagnation. The elderly Nexari representative floated forward. We have myths about the predecessors. Ancient beings who ruled before the ancients. We thought they were just stories. Paul continued reading the crucial passage. We have chosen to break the cycle. Rather than wait for our civilization to collapse and destroy the galaxy with it, we will voluntarily give up our power. We will travel to a small world on the galaxy's edge and begin again. But how? Lisa asked. How do you give up millions of years of knowledge and technology? Paul had found that answer too. They built something they called the forgetting machine. It could erase memories and alter genetics. They used it to remove all knowledge of their technology and their history from their own minds. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. They chose to become primitive again. Paul continued. They selected a planet that could support human life and landed there with nothing but basic tools and clothes. According to the records, they called it the Great Restart. Earth, Lisa whispered. They chose Earth. Yes, but there's more, Captain. They didn't just erase their own memories. They built safeguards into the process. The forgetting machine was designed to gradually restore their knowledge over thousands of years, but only if their descendants proved they had truly changed. The Thorian representative growled softly. What kind of safeguards? Paul's voice was grim as he read the final sections. The ancient technology scattered across the galaxy isn't just leftovers from their civilization. It's a test. The facilities will only activate for humans who demonstrate wisdom, compassion, and restraint. If humanity tries to use the technology for conquest or control, it will shut down permanently. And if they pass the test? Lisa asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Then the technology will fully activate, and humanity will regain all the knowledge and power they gave up. But the records suggest this will only happen if humans prove they can be trusted with such power. The aliens in the room looked terrified. The idea that humanity might regain their ancient abilities was their worst nightmare. But Paul wasn't finished. There's one more thing, Captain. The records mention something called the final safeguard. If humanity shows signs of repeating the mistakes of their ancestors, the ancient technology will do more than just shut down. What will it do? Lisa asked. It will activate a process that will remove humanity from the galaxy entirely. Not kill them, but transport them to another galaxy where they can't affect anyone else. The ancients were determined not to become the same kind of oppressive force they had fought against in their youth. Lisa felt the weight of what Paul had discovered. Humanity wasn't just the descendants of the galaxy's former rulers. They were participants in a test that had been running for millions of years. A test to see if they could be trusted with ultimate power. Paul, is there any indication of how the test is scored? How do we know if we're passing or failing? Paul's voice was quiet. According to the records, the test is always running. Every action humanity takes, every choice they make when dealing with other species, every decision about how to use their growing technology. It's all being monitored by systems the ancients built into the galaxy itself. The Krillian representative spoke up. Then the question becomes, are modern humans passing this test? Lisa thought about humanity's recent interactions with alien species. They had joined the Galactic Council peacefully. They had shared their technology freely. They had tried to work with other species rather than dominate them. But she also knew that some humans wanted to use the ancient technology for their own benefit. There were those who thought humanity should reclaim their birthright as galactic rulers. Paul, how long do we have? Is there a time limit on this test? The records aren't clear, Captain. But there are references to something called the awakening. Period. Once the ancient technology begins to activate, which it has, the test enters its final phase. Humanity will either prove they've learned from their ancestors' mistakes, or they'll face the consequences. Lisa looked around the room at the alien representatives. Some looked hopeful that humanity might pass the test. Others looked resigned to whatever fate awaited them. There's one more thing, Paul added. The records mention that the choice won't be made by humanity's leaders or governments. It will be made by ordinary humans when they're faced with the temptation of absolute power. As the call ended, Lisa realized that humanity was approaching the most important moment in galactic history. They were about to discover whether millions of years of growth and learning had been enough to change them from the beings their ancestors had been. The test was almost over. Soon, everyone would know if humanity deserved a second chance at godhood or if they would be removed from the galaxy forever. Admiral Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Victory, watching hundreds of human ships gather in space around Earth. In the 6 months since the ancient discoveries, everything had changed. Some alien species had fled to the far edges of the galaxy. Others had sent warships to contain humanity. A few had come to Earth offering immediate surrender. The Galactic Council had split apart completely. The Valerian Empire wanted to attack humanity before the ancient technology could fully activate. The Krillian Hive believed humans should be worshipped as returning gods. The Nexari had simply disappeared, retreating to their hidden worlds. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving signals from the ancient network again. The power levels are increasing across all facilities." Chris nodded grimly. Every day, more ancient technology came online. Weapons that could destroy solar systems. Ships that could travel instantly across the galaxy. Machines that could reshape entire worlds. All of it waiting for humanity to claim it. The temptation was enormous, Dr. Susan White was working frantically in her laboratory on Luna Station. As the leading expert on ancient psychology, she had been tasked with understanding the final pieces of their technology. What she had found terrified her. The ancients built choice points into everything, she explained to President John Hayes. Over video link. Every piece of technology requires a moral decision before it will activate. It's not enough to just want the power. You have to prove you deserve it. President Hayes looked tired. The past months had been the most difficult of his political career. Half of humanity wanted to activate the ancient systems and reclaim their birthright as galactic rulers. The other half believed they should destroy the technology to prove they had learned from their ancestors' mistakes. Dr. White, what exactly do these choice points test for? Susan pulled up her research on screen. Compassion over conquest. Wisdom over power. Service over dominance. Every ancient facility has a different test, but they all measure the same thing. Whether humans will use unlimited power to help others or to control them. And if we fail these tests, according to the records Dr. Newman translated, the final safeguard will activate. Humanity will be removed from this galaxy entirely. Meanwhile, on the planet Kepler 438b, something extraordinary was happening. The underground city that Dr. Ben Clark had discovered was coming back to life. Ancient machines were awakening, and they were sending out a simple message to every human in the galaxy. The time of choosing has come. Present yourselves for the final test. Commander Jack Morrison was the first to respond. He had started this whole chain of events by finding the first ancient station. Now he felt responsible for seeing it through to the end. He arrived at the underground city to find thousands of other humans already there. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, farmers, teachers, children. People from every human world had felt. The call and come dot in the center of the city was a massive chamber that hadn't been there before. Inside was a single pedestal with a glowing orb on top. As humans approached the orb, it showed them visions of what they could have if they chose to reclaim their ancient heritage. Jack saw himself commanding fleets that could conquer entire galaxies. He saw technology that could make him immortal and all-powerful. He saw himself ruling over alien species, bringing order to the chaos of the universe. But he also saw the cost. Civilizations that never learned to solve their own problems. Species that remained children under humanity's protection. A galaxy where nothing new could grow because humans had already perfected everything. It's beautiful and terrible at the same time, said a voice beside him. Jack turned to see Dr. Lisa Carter, his science officer from the original discovery. Lisa, what do you think we should do? Before she could answer, the orb pulsed with new visions. These showed them what would happen if humanity rejected the ancient technology, the slow growth of galactic civilization, young species learning to solve their own problems, new discoveries and innovations that could only come from minds that hadn't been given all the answers, but it also showed the struggles, wars that humanity could have prevented, suffering that humanity could have ended, progress that would take millions of years instead of centuries. More humans entered the chamber. Each one faced the same choice. Each one saw both the glory and the horror of absolute power. Dr. Rachel Green stood before the orb with tears in her eyes. "My daughter is sick," she whispered. "The ancient medical technology could cure her instantly. How can I choose to let her suffer?" But Amy Davis, the communications specialist, shook her head. "If we take the technology, we'll cure your daughter. But we'll also ensure that no one else ever learns how to cure that disease naturally. We'll rob the galaxy of the chance to grow." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Humans argued passionately on both sides. Some believed they had a duty to use their power to help others. Others believed they had a duty to let others help themselves. As the discussions continued, alien ships appeared in orbit around the planet. The Valerian war fleet had come to destroy humanity before they could reclaim their power. But so had the Krillian hive, ready to defend their returning gods, and the Thorian Empire, and the Nexari Collective, and dozens of other species. Galaxy was holding its breath, waiting to see what choice humanity would make. It was a child who broke the deadlock. 8-year-old Tommy Chun had come to the planet with his scientist mother. He walked up to the orb without fear and placed his small hand on its surface. "I think," he said in his clear child's voice, "that the best present you can give someone is teaching them how to make their own presence." The orb pulsed with brilliant light. Tommy's simple wisdom had cut through all the complex arguments and reached the heart of the matter. Commander Morrison stepped forward. "The boy is right. Our ancestors gave up their power because they understood something we're just learning. True strength isn't about what you can do for others. It's about helping them discover what they can do for themselves." One by one, humans began stepping forward and placing their hands on the orb. Each touch sent a message to the ancient network, scattered across the galaxy. A message of choice. Dr. Rachel Green was among the last to decide. She thought of her sick daughter and of all the other children across the galaxy who would never learn to heal themselves if humanity took that ability away from them. She placed her hand on the orb and whispered, "I choose growth over safety. I choose potential over power." As the final human made their choice, the orb exploded with light that could be seen from orbit. The ancient technology across the galaxy responded to humanity's decision. The weapons powered down. The godlike machines went silent. The technology that could have made humans the rulers of the galaxy again began to dismantle itself. But not all of it disappeared. Some of the ancient knowledge remained, carefully filtered and limited. Medical techniques that could guide rather than replace natural healing. Educational systems that could teach rather than indoctrinate. Technologies that could assist rather than dominate. President Hayes watched from Earth as reports came in from across the galaxy. "They chose wisdom," he said quietly. "After all this time, they finally chose wisdom." The alien fleets in orbit began to stand down. The Valerians lowered their weapons. The Krillians stopped their worship preparations. Slowly, carefully, representatives from dozens of species began requesting communication with the humans below. Admiral Parker received the first message. It was from Zefkar of the Valerian Empire. "Humanity of Earth," the message read, "for the first time in galactic history, a species has been offered unlimited power and chose to give it up. You have passed a test that your ancestors designed, but more importantly, you have passed a test that the galaxy needed you to pass." Commander Morrison stood in the ancient chamber as it slowly went dark around him. The orb had cracked and was fading, its purpose finally fulfilled after millions of years of waiting. "Jack," Dr. Carter said beside him, "do you think we made the right choice?" Jack looked around at the humans who had gathered to make the most important decision in galactic history. Scientists and soldiers, children and elders, people from every human world united by a simple understanding. "I think," he said, "that our ancestors would be proud. They gave up everything so we could have the chance to choose differently. And we did." As the humans began to leave the ancient city, they carried with them something more valuable than unlimited power. They carried the knowledge that they had faced ultimate temptation and chosen the harder path. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear of the ancients. Instead, it was guided by hope in what humanity had become. The test was over. The real work of building a better galaxy could finally begin.